All right, it's time. I am finally sitting down to talk about everything that I knit in 2023. I started producing this video a couple weeks ago, but it turned out to be more work than I thought because I made way more stuff than I remember making. Not to say I don't remember any of the particular whips, but when I look back on my 2023, I would not have guessed that I finished 58 projects. That's not to say that that's everything I knit in 2023. For sure, I also had projects that I started and got most of the way through and then didn't actually end up finishing up and weaving in the ends before the end of the year, so I'm not counting those. I'm only counting projects where I finished and bound off in 2023, which means there are also some things that the bulk of the knitting was probably done in 2022, but I didn't wrap up until last year. Here we are on my Ravelry homepage. This is the first year that I'm doing an everything I knit last year video because this is the first year that I've actually kept track of it all year. I started tracking my projects in Ravelry in mid-2022, so I didn't have a great picture this time last year of what I had done the year before. But now I have the full year because I've been doing it pretty fastidiously the entire time. So here it shows everything I have. So what I'm going to do is select by year completed and do 2023. So these are all of my projects, and I'm going to try to talk about them in quick succession because we don't need details on 58 projects. We don't need this video to be like an hour and a half long. So I'm going to try to get through this as quick as possible. Almost all of these I've talked about in previous podcasts or vlogs or what have you. So none of these should be new. And last spring, I even did a everything I knit in spring video, which I'm going to be reusing the footage for because it took a really long time to record the footage of me trying on all the clothes. And since I already had like a dozen of them from that one, I'm just going to use that. Let's get into it and run through all of the projects that I did pretty quickly. And then I can talk about my stats because I did make a spreadsheet of some of the basic details of this so I can reflect on my knitting statistics. So I'm going to go in order of the day I bound off. The first two items that I finished in 2023 were 2022 Christmas gifts. I kind of improvised these scarves that were partially brioche, partially garter stitch scarves in NFL team colors. I did two Steelers ones that I finished in 2022 and gifted on time, but I didn't manage to finish up the Bills ones until early 2023. I did end up having a deadline, however. I had to finish them on January 11th because my Bills fans were going to a Bills game that weekend. So I kind of hustled to get them done and get the patches on and in the mail so that they could wear them to the football game. The next project I finished last January was a French macaroon baby pullover. This one was sort of commissioned. It was for my mom's friend's daughter, but my mom's friend's daughter was a childhood friend of mine. So my mom basically told me she's having a baby and that she wanted to give something hand knitted. And I pulled yarn from stash and made this pullover. And then if we skip over the next project, the following project I finished was a matching beanie to go with it. So baby sweaters are great because they use so little. So I had these partial skeins in stash that I just worked really quickly and made this super simple garter stitch pullover and then this basic beanie hat to go with it, which were really cute. In between finishing those two, I finished a Parry beanie. I had made one of those for my sister for Christmas, and I felt bad that I didn't have time to make one for my mom, so I made one for my mom in January and gifted it to her afterwards. The first big project that I actually finished in 2023 was my Soho blouse, which was a test knit for Kadri. I used Lion brand FOMO, which I have huge amounts of in stash because it was one of those Lion brand discontinued clearance yarns that I super stocked up on. And I do really like FOMO, I'm not gonna lie. I made mine a size bigger than the pattern would have suggested as far as positive ease because I wanted it to be super oversized, especially because it's kind of sheer, and I really love the way it came out. My next finished object was probably my favorite one of the year. I wear this pullover all the time. It's a free pattern from Drops Design called Abstract Rose, and I made it out of this Sorella DK that I had bought that I treasured very much. It was the first time I actually bought a proper sweater quantity of Sorella, and I paired it with Hobby Diablo, to make it a little floof. And this sweater was really fun and interesting to me because it looks like a circular yoke, but it's actually a raglan with like really spaced out raglan increases. So there's this kind of like rectangle, pie wedge shape around it. And those rectangles are on like the edges of where the increases are. It fits like a circular yoke, but it works up like a raglan, and it was really fun, and I really loved that one. And as soon as I finished that one, I had leftover yarn. I really enjoyed using that yarn combo. So I found a pattern that I had in a book I already own, and I made up the steamed mittens in the same yarn. Then, since it was February, I always give my mom a Valentine's Day gift for February. So I used up some yarn scraps and I made her this Valentine's scrunchie set. Super simple. Don't even remember which scrunchie pattern I used. For sure, it was a free one because it's such a small item. But again, I count that as one finished item, even though it's 4 small things, because I did it in like 2 days. The next garment I finished was the Wallaby pullover. And honestly, this is one of those things about Ravelry. You can put like the status of how you felt about the project. And I used the ugh crying little emoji guy. And I don't remember feeling that way, but I guess I did. So I wouldn't do this pattern again. But I do love it and I wear it all the time. It's this just like monstrously oversized fluffy cocoon, but it's got not full sleeves because of the weird bat wing shape to it. Tony Lipsy does her make along every winter, and this was what I used last year. This was a pair of sport weight skeins from Megs & Co. that had been sitting in my stash since I went to the Central New York Fiber Festival the previous June, and I really, really love these colors. They were so beautiful and so striking, and I saved them until I came up with what I thought was the perfect use for them, and that is a very comfy shawl, this super soft base. I can't recommend Megs & Co. enough. The next thing I finished, which I remember casting on and bringing with me on the road trip that I went on at the end of February, so I did make most of this on the road trip, was the Giza sweater. It was a kit I bought from We Are Knitters. I really like this yarn. The fabric that it makes is so nice. As with all We Are Knitters projects, very simple to follow, very beginner friendly, and I really like the material. The problem is I have this chronic issue where every time I order a kit from We Are Knitters, I order a size smaller because I'm cheap and it's one more skein to get the size I actually need. And I don't know why I'm like this. I've done this like 4 times. I just need to get the next size up. I need to bite the bullet and buy one more skein. But every time I talk myself into, oh, I can fit into a medium or a small or whatever it is. And like, I wish that sweater was one size bigger. So that should be a lesson for me to take away from this. Is like, if I order from We Are Knitters, just do what the sizing suggestion says. The next up was another test knit. This was the Semper Slipover V-neck edition by the Knit Pearl Girl. I really like how this one came out. I had 2 skeins of this very, very pretty kind of whimsical rainbowy mohair from Ashling Yarns called Mountain Mist, and I'd been saving it for something special. So I paired it with this very plain beige Audine Wools sock yarn that I had in stash, and I love how this one came out. I do wear it quite a bit. I will say my one qualm about this one, and it's not the pattern, it's me, and it's the same qualm I have about just about every tubular bind off I've done. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong or if it's just not for me. I love the way tubular bind-offs look, but I am very bad at making them not too tight. This one in particular, the ribbing along the bottom is too tight and it kind of cinches in just at that bottom row because it won't stretch. And I've even grown and learned from my experiences, and now when I do tubular bind-offs, especially only in a project with mohair, I'll cut this strand of mohair after the last setup rows, but before, maybe I should cut it before the setup rows. Maybe that's the takeaway here. Anyway, I cut it before I do the sewing bit, but maybe I should be cutting the mohair before the setup rows too, because maybe that's what's taking the stretch away. I don't know. It's not the worst. It's definitely still wearable. All the garments that I have that issue with are still wearable. I just wish it was as stretchy as I think it is when other people do it. The next one I did was a stash buster. This one was very satisfying, and it used up 11 skeins of yarn, and it's just a little granny stitch ripple tiny afghan that I did, and it matches the color scheme in our bedroom. It just sits in a basket in our bedroom most of the time, and on especially cold nights, I put it over my side because I am always freezing and my husband never wants a blanket. So it's perfect to have for that, but mostly it was a palette cleanser to make me feel better and use up a lot of skeins at once. Okay, the Stricka Cocoon Cardigan was a fun one. That was made with Bernat Plentiful, which is just like one giant ball of yarn, and the whole gimmick is that you can make a sweater with just one ball of yarn. And that turned out to be true, and I only used 3/4 of it, so I still have a bunch of that left. But it's a very simple, beginner-friendly cardigan where you just knit a giant rectangle and then you kind of fold in the edges, and the tubes at the ends become your sleeves, and the giant rectangle is kind of this like slouchy folded cocoon thing. Next, I made the Hillside Cardigan, which was a free pattern I found because I really wanted to use the Noro Sweeto I had bought on clearance. I only had 2 balls of that, which is actually a ton of yarn because there's quite a lot of yardage in each one. And I paired it with some simple gray Katia mohair that I had just to bulk it up a little bit to be able to suit this super bulky pattern. That one, I didn't enjoy working with the Sweeto yarn. That was a pain in the butt. However, I do really like the finished object and I wear it quite often. Next, I finished a belated birthday gift for my husband. The Newfield tie was something he requested. He specifically wanted a knit tie, and I don't know why, because he doesn't wear neckties like at all, and he wore it like one time, and he took this one picture of it when he was wearing it, and that's the only time I've seen him do it. And it's fingering weight linen stitch, and it was hellish to make, but I did it because he asked for it, and whatever. The Bright Side pullover was a really fun one that I did. All I had was 3 skeins of this undyed fingering weight wool from the Wool Room at Longmeadow Farm, and I loved this pretty tweedy undyed yarn, so I tried to find a sweater that would work with it, and this is a nice basic that I made. If you remember, one of my Knit Yours resolutions for last year was to make more basics and neutral garments because I'm drawn to variegated yarns, but I don't find them particularly wearable. I mean, many of the things I've already talked about were neutrals, and I think I did stick to that one. I'll talk about that in my next video, which is going to be about my Knit Yours resolutions for this year and how last year went. But this one definitely fulfilled that need, and it's one of my favorite finished objects. That one and the Abstract Rose pullover are the ones that I wear the most out of my finished objects from last year. Then, if you recall, I had a work trip where I was stuck in a hotel for a few days, and instead of letting myself cast on a new project to bring with me, I only brought the oldest, most frustrating whips that had been languishing in my house, and I forced myself to finish several of them, which was very bold of me, I think, and I think it worked out. I'm very glad I did it. I wrapped up the Primavera sweater, the Fuzzy Vest, which is a pattern by the Knit Pearl Girl, but I made it into a blouse because there was so much yarn left over after I made the vest portion that I added sleeves to it. It's not the best. I kept saying I was going to add elastic to the neck, and I have not done so yet. This footage is from my spring video, but I still haven't done it as of now. I have worn it without the elastic though. And then the Lexington cowl, which was also a very fine yarn. I think those are a sport weight, but it's a very small gauge linen stitch project. And between that and the Newfield tie, I realized I really hate linen stitch, especially at a small gauge. So I'll probably never do it again. But that was a fun souvenir because I bought the yarn for that and the pattern for that when I was in Lexington, Kentucky. And it's the Lexington cowl. So I thought that was cute. The next project I did was a teeny little palette cleanser project that honestly only took like an hour, where I needed some curtain ties for my porch outside to tie the curtains back, and I just pulled this cotton yarn out of stash and I used one of these tiny 50-gram skeins to make 3 little curtain ties that I think did the job and got my creativity flowing. It worked out well. I finished the That 70s stripe tee, which I was purely inspired to make based on finding this yarn at Joann Fabrics. It's their store brand, K&C Essential, and it's just, I loved this striping one that was the cream color, but then it had these very 70s blue and orange and yellow stripes in it. And so I found that 70s stripe tee because I was looking for a sort of 70s style pattern, and that one was right on the nose. And I paired it with some plain cream yarn to do the ribbing around the edges because I didn't want the striping on the edges. It was a simple one. And I have worn that one a few times, but again, that one, the ends are tight. Like my bind off wasn't great on that. If you were here last year, you probably remember a ton of conversation about the Zuni cardigan, which was supposed to be a Christmas 2022 gift. But then I realized halfway through making it during the holiday season that I did not have enough yarn to finish, and I kind of panicked and set it aside and made something else for Christmas. And then in the winter, I came back to it and reevaluated, and I finished it as a Mother's Day gift. So that pattern originally has patch pockets on it. It's got full length sleeves that have this like obscenely long ribbing because you fold them back double on themselves. So I think it's like 12 or 14 inches of ribbing, and then you fold it back to be 6 or 7 inches on the ends. And it also has like a knit belt that's double knit that you would tie it closed with. So my solution, since I did not have nearly as much of the main color as I thought I did when I started, was to cut the pockets, cut the belt, not literally, from my plans. I did not make the pockets, I did not make the belt, and I made 3/4 length sleeves with just the 6 or 7 inches of ribbing, not the doubled ribbing that you would fold back. And I think it came out pretty cute. My mom liked it. I don't know if she wears it, but it looked cute on her when she tried it on, so that's a success. Then this next slew you should recognize from my spring video still. I made the George's top, which I loved making, so I immediately cast on another one. Before I finished the second one, I needed another little palette cleanser project, so I made the cottage hair accessories from Wool and Pine Designs, and those are really fun, and I do use those often, and I recommend that pattern. It's great for using up scraps, but also they're really cute little accessories and super giftable. Then I finished the George's top. Then I made the Summer Secret crop, which is a great one for a small quantity of yarn. I then crocheted the Delaney cardigan with this very floofy cotton yarn that I've been holding on to. I don't know the details of where it's from because the ball bands were not detailed enough, and I got it at Rhinebeck and I have no idea where it was from, but it's very soft and nice. It's definitely a warm weather cardigan because it's got a bit of an open weave and it's cotton, but it's nice to have in the summertime for sure. I made another Summer Secret crop with 2 different quantities of leftovers I had. You might recognize the gray portion of this second Summer Secret crop is the same yarn that was left over from my Giza sweater. The next one was a commission from my sister who wanted a sort of Daisy Jones inspired 70s style hippie like bikini crop top thing. So I found the Sophia crop top and then I adapted it to add some length and some detailing around the edges and stuff, and I think she enjoyed that. Again, I have no idea if she wore it or not, but she acted like she liked it when I gave it to her. So I also crocheted myself the Sagebrush tank top out of this fingering weight Hobie cotton that I've had in stash for a long time. If you were here in 2023, you will definitely remember the saga of the Calad shirt, which I was so excited to start and really dove in head first, and then just crashed when I realized that the quantity of yarn that I bought, and I still don't really think I was mistaken. I was on gauge, and I think based on the size I was making, I should have had enough, but I absolutely didn't have enough, and I had to buy a 4th skein to finish this simple summer top, which, I mean, dig back in the archives if you want that tea, but that was an ordeal, and I did not have fun with that. I do like the finished item, but I haven't had much chance to wear it. Then I did a mini mock neck tank out of this cotton I had in stash. I got that in a Knitty Fix, Handspun Hope Ethiopian cotton, which I like that one. I love the color of that one, but that handspun was a little thick and thin, and sometimes the texture of the top looks a little off, in particular right across the bust. there's this like stripe of kind of rough looking cotton, and then like most of it just looks very smooth and same width. So I don't know, it didn't work out the best, but it's still very wearable and I still love it. Then I made the Moonset tee, which I love and I've been wearing all year round because it's easy enough. It's a t-shirt. I've been wearing it in the winter when I can throw a cardigan on over it, but it's also a great one for the summer. And the blend of that yarn is not too warm for the summer. 44% cotton, 43% acrylic, 13% nylon. So I guess it's a cotton sock yarn, but it's very comfortable in my opinion. And I love the way it came out. Then I did another mini mock neck tank. If you haven't caught on, the theme of last summer was I would make a relatively quick summer top that I really loved and immediately cast on a second one that I didn't finish right away because I would get bored and start a larger garment. So that's me. I then made this leaf crop, which is yet to be determined if this was a good idea or not. I just had these 2 skeins of the Galler Yarns Inca Eco Organic Cotton, and I really loved the texture and the color of those, and I wanted to make a top out of them, and summer was dwindling, and I kind of did this on a whim. It's a highly adapted leaf top. I've made the full leaf top in the past. This one was much smaller and removed at least 1 repeat. It hasn't been blocked. So as it is, it looks barely wearable. I actually hadn't even sewn the buttons on it. I haven't had an opportunity to wear it because I technically only finished it the morning that I filmed all of these try-ons for this video. I pulled it out of my storage in my craft room to show you, and I realized that I hadn't sewn them on. So I sewed on the buttons really quick, but this one might end up being a sort of swim cover kind of thing. Then I finished the Amadeo cardigan, which was fun, but if you remember, I had to completely frog and reknit the entire back panel after I was already kind of tired of the project. So I don't have fond memories of that one, but I do love the finished object and I have been wearing it. I made the Shell Yeah Bikini by Knitting Tipsy, which was a great experience, and I do recommend that sort of like that pattern for sure. It's a knit to size, completely customized for your body, which was really nice. I do have pictures of the finished object on my Ravelry page, but I am not going to show them on YouTube because of YouTube's monetization policy, and I don't want my videos to get demonetized because my body is in them. Sorry. So check out my Ravelry page. And if you have any questions or you want to look into any of these that I'm talking about more, because I know I'm flying through them, my Ravelry page is always linked in the description of all of my videos, and I always have all of these details there. I finished the Shell Yeah bikini because I was going on a cruise with my mom, which also had a formal night. So I had been working on the Lily gown, which I made and finished in time to wear on the cruise for formal night, which was a fun project, although I don't know if I'll ever have a use for this gown again. I don't know, maybe for a wedding or something. And when I got home, I transitioned into fall knits, but was also slowly transitioning into knocking out some smaller gift knits. So you'll see a few more accessories roll out that I kept, and then it's all gift knits till the end of the year. So I made this tea cozy for the teapot I have in my house. It's bulky weight leftovers of, I believe, Hue and Me from Lion Brand. So that was just an afternoon project because I had a new teapot and I thought it needed a cozy. I did crochet myself the Granny Pop V-neck sweater. So I guess that was the last garment I made for myself last year. And that was a fun one, and I did use up a bunch of yarn from Stash. I like that project a lot, and I like the way it fits. I made this cabled hat as a stocking stuffer. I made the Italian summer scarf, which I wasn't sure. I thought it would be a Christmas gift. It ended up being a birthday gift for my mom. Then I made the free breakfast beanie. Around the same time, I finished the Envy hood, which was made with the leftovers of my Bright Side pullover and a single skein from the same yarn manufacturer that I had in Stash. Haven't had a chance to wear that one, but I do like how it came out, and maybe in some colder weather it'll have a go. I improvised a ribbed beanie for my mom's boyfriend out of some alpaca mill ends that I got over the summer when I was filming my New York Fiber Trail series. I made my husband the sock head slouch hat out of a single skein of this tweed that I got at Rhinebeck for him. I made fingerless mitts to go with the free breakfast hat. The pattern I used was a free pattern called Easy Fingerless Mittens with Thumbs, but I adapted it to have the same sort of waffle pattern to match the hat. I made 2 matching beanies for my in-laws, which were made out of this super squishy, pretty, bulky yarn that is dyed to match shelter cats. I've talked about that quite a bit. For a little tiny palette cleanser in the middle of my giant holiday knitting rush, I made myself a couple little coasters out of some yarn that I've had in stash for a long time. It was a single skein that I had nothing else I could imagine doing with, and I wanted a little bit of decoration for my office, especially a coaster for people sitting in my office to put their drinks on. So I knocked those out in one afternoon. And then, of course, if you've been around for the last month or so, you will recognize the big Christmas items that I was really, really pressing to get done on time. The Uno sweater that I made for my best friend out of some wool that remains unnamed from Rhinebeck that I never managed to find information on, that I accidentally color blocked, but it accidentally color blocked at least in a way that looks kind of intentional. And that was paired with kid silk mohair. The anniversary temperature blanket, which was a thing, that was a difficult project, but I got through it and I made that and gifted it on Christmas Day as planned. Before Christmas, I did manage to finish one of these cabled hot water bottle covers that I wanted to give my sister. I finished the snowfall sweater scarf that my mom had requested of me, knit out of this beautiful undyed sport weight yarn that I held double. It was very squishy and super soft. She did not believe me when I said it was made of wool, so it was, Mom, but it was very soft Italian merino wool that I picked up at Rhinebeck. At the last minute, I made this bulky weight sage beanie to also gift to a family member on Christmas because I didn't have time to finish anything else in that window of time except something super bulky. And then over the Christmas weekend, on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, I worked on a second Warm Greetings hot water bottle cover so that I made an identical one for my mom to give to her, the same as the one that I made for my sister. So I only have a picture of one of those, but trust me, they were identical. They were the same stash yarn on the same Amazon water bottle. Oh my gosh. I am trying to keep this one short, I swear. I've been talking for a while, but I know once I edit it down, it won't be so bad. So at least we're not at like an hour and a half. All right, so here is my spreadsheet. So this doesn't have a ton of analytics in it, but I just thought it would be fun to look at how many items I made, how long they were on the needles, and then, you know, how many skeins I used, how many grams and yarns I used overall, because that makes me feel more accomplished to have these like numbers to put to it. So the average number of days something was on my needles was 34 days. It's funny because that doesn't tell us much. There are so many projects that are 0 days or 1 day because they were super straightforward things or small projects that I did in virtually no time. But then that temperature blanket was in progress almost the entire year. I started it February 4th and I didn't finish it until December 21st. So that doesn't tell us a ton, but yeah, that Primavera sweater, that really got me too. That was on the needles nearly a year. I think it's fun to look at this kind of stuff. So first of all, I made this little pie chart because why not? Google will do it for me. Half of my 58 projects were garments, which I think is cool. And I did separate out baby garments because I don't think those count as garments because they're so small, they're basically accessories. So mostly garments for sure. And then in the other half, mostly accessories. But there are little slivers of home accessories or blankets and baby garments that I did also. 23 of the 58 things I made were gifted, which I didn't remember making that many gifts, which makes me feel like a nice person. Since I round to the nearest quarter skein instead of actually like weighing my yarn balls when I'm done working with them to see exactly how much is left, a lot of these are like 1.5 or 1 3/4 left over. That is included. So it estimates that I, used roughly 184.25 balls of yarn. But of course, some of them are 50-gram skeins. Some of them are larger kind of novelty skeins. So functionally, I actually used 15,335 grams, which is about 153 100-gram skeins. So I guess on average, I used more of the small skeins or partial skeins that kind of snowballed to create that 184 number. The yardage that I used was roughly 44,807 yards. So, and again, this is not including anything that I cast on, like not every single stitch that I stitched in 2023. This is the total for all of the projects that I bound off. So I think in the grand scheme, some of the stitches that I stitched in 22 that are counted in this number will kind of balance out when a lot of the stitches that I actually stitched in 2023 that aren't counted here will end up counting towards this year. I hope that was an interesting little jaunt through my project history and that you enjoyed my recap of all of the things I made. Like I said, I know I was going pretty fast when I was rushing through this because I don't want this video to be excessively long. You can always hit up my Ravelry page or my Instagram if you want to see more details about the things that I made or the things that I'm making now, because trust me, I have moved on quick. Comment below to tell me how many projects you worked on in 2023 and subscribe so you can come back when I release my next video all about my 2024 Knit Year's resolutions, because I've got some plans. So glad you joined me today, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye!